Hi everyone, this is Kyle with K-Debate. I'm going to be making a much shorter video today based off of a discussion I had with someone a few days ago. And I want to coin a term, if I am allowed to, and it is anti-science. That is the term I would like to coin because I had a conversation with somebody regarding something somebody was doing on a YouTube channel that they were watching, and they had made an argument that evolution cannot exist because a spoon does not, over millions of years, evolve into a spork and then into a fork. Therefore, evolution was disproven. I consider that almost the straw man's argument, but they're trying to use somebody else's argument changed. So it's not them building up their own argument, it's them misunderstanding using bad logic and reasoning or a lack of fundamental understanding of the field that they're talking about, and using that logic, or I like to call it anti-science logic, to disprove what they're talking about. Generally, they're seen as uneducated or even moronic, but that's not the case. They just don't understand what they're saying. It's not a valid argument because it's not actually the argument somebody's making, they're misunderstanding. So, well, some people can say, well, they just don't know what they're talking about, or, that's blatantly wrong. That's true, but I want to use the term anti-science because I think it's a cool name. And this was just one of those philosophical conversations I was having with somebody, and they didn't understand what I was trying to say, and then I started talking about it, and they're like, okay, whatever. It's not important to them. So I started Googling it, and I found that there's a Wikipedia article for anti-science, not hyphenated though. It reads, anti-science is a position that rejects science and the scientific method. People holding anti-scientific views do not accept that science is an objective method, as it purports to be, or that it generates universal knowledge. They also contend that scientific reductionism, in particular, is an inherently limited means to reach understanding of the complex world we live in. Anti-science proponents also criticize that they perceive as the unquestioned privilege, power, and influence science seems to wield in society, industry, and politics. They object to what they regard as an arrogant or closed-minded attitude among scientists. Now, that is not what I am saying. That is a different terminology. I like that terminology, but that's more of a stance on how to gain knowledge, not the, I want to say, debating aspects of science. Because the straw man argument is you build up a purposely weak other side and then tear it apart because it's easy. This is, you're kind of doing that, but in the context of what somebody else has argued. So if the other person were to be able to respond, it wouldn't be a straw man argument. So it only works when responding to somebody who cannot directly reply, or at least not quickly, and if they do so, then it would be disastrous. So that's why I wanted to coin this term, anti-science, with a hyphen. So let me give two examples I wrote down. One is, and I've heard this one before, Deoxyribo nucleic acid. We can't be made of that because it's acid. And if we weren't made out of it, we would melt. Because that's what acid does. Now, the incorrect assumption that acid is just acid, as you see on TV, you don't understand chemistry. You don't understand how DNA actually works, and you don't understand the argument the other side that promotes DNA as a biological necessity. You don't understand what they're trying to argue. You don't understand their actual argument. because most people don't argue that you shouldn't melt. You argue that it's not even an argument. It's actually just a scientific process. I mean, we could look at it. It's there. So it's more of an ignorant standpoint that tries to drum up reasonable logic that's not based off of reason or logic. The other one is, obviously, evolution cannot exist because a spoon does not evolve into a fork. That one also disregards DNA, the process of being made of tiny, very, very, very tiny things that are made of other tiny things that if you put them together differently result in very different functions. Because DNA is very complex. I consider it a very interesting concept to think about because it is so complex and yet it's made of the simplest things. So if you don't understand how people argue evolution works, which is the randomization of DNA, then you would start saying stuff about things that don't actually have DNA. It's like one person commented, it was about plants. They wanted, it was in my biology class. Somebody commented on this acid can only be contained in glass. And somebody asked why, and they said, the teacher said something about it breaking down the chemical composition of flesh, of things with, what is it called? That catalyst. Pretty much the stuff that hydrogen peroxide reacts with. I can't remember the word for it. It does something to, it just eats flesh. And they're like, well, why doesn't it eat glass? It's like, because glass isn't cellular. It's molecular. Which cells are also molecular, but cells are designed from DNA, where glass is comprised of a molecular structure, usually of silicon. So they are different. Though flesh is made out of molecules, it's shaped by DNA. It's a different shape, it's a different structure. This particular acid only reacted to the fleshy stuff. So it could be contained. And then there's acids that can only be contained in plastics. There's acids that can only be contained in an oxygen-free environment. So there's a lot of different things. Acid doesn't just burn flesh. There are acids that burn air. It's a chemical reaction that is usually it eats it. It tears it apart. So even it just causes a chemical reaction that is usually detrimental to life. So, but not always. Not always. There's a lot of acids that we need, like DNA. So that's why I wanted to say anti-science is, let me just read my notes again, using unsound logic or bad reasoning to try and disprove or show doubt in a scientific or logical argument, usually with the misunderstanding of how the original reasoning was made or lacking basic knowledge in the field. That is what I wanted to make this video about. And I have. So, do you agree? Do you think this term is accurate? Do you think the name is cool? Because when it comes to naming things, if you call something something dumb, it will still, have its general validity. But I just think this is it has the right connotative idea as well. It's really hot in here. Sorry, sweating. It has the connotation of not only not being scientific, but being the opposite of what science is. Not just that it doesn't use logic, but it actually uses bad logic, the wrong kind of logic. And it's trying to come to a conclusion based off of false pretenses, usually because you disagree with what the other side is, not always. It could just be that you're very misinformed. And once you are informed, then you will switch sides. But most of the time there is an underlying cause of why you believe something, and it is not based off of logic or reason. You can give somebody the logical, reasonable explanation that is actually true, and they will reject it because they don't want to change because of this other premise. So anti-science is, by definition, somebody trying, either because they don't understand or because they just don't want to understand, what is true. So, what do you guys think? I'm going to end the video because it's already over 10 minutes long and I don't understand how this keeps happening. So, take care.